some of you have been to Masada before, but even people that have been to Masada several times, first of all, it's still exciting. And more than that, the story is very complicated. And more than that, there are many angles to the story. So I'll try to make some sense in the story. But in order to do it, we need to understand several things. The first thing that we need to understand, everything that we see over here is from a very specific period, unlike almost any other place in Israel, that we arrived to a site, and I told you there are 40 different layers or whatever. Over here we share a very, very specific story, okay? Of a very specific period. We are in the middle of nowhere. People didn't want to live here. It's really hot. There were no tourists at the time. There were no cold water at the time. There's nothing to do here. Okay, so people didn't want to live here, but for a very specific reason and a very specific time. Why would people come and live here if it's so terrible over here? Today is really nice weather over here. So why would anyone would like to come and live over here?
Run away from?
So if you want to run away from someone, normally you won't build walls and whatever, you will find shelter and you will escape. The truth is that Masada actually started as a small watchtower over here, overlooking the Dead Sea, and see if the Edomites mobilizing their forces across the Dead Sea. In case the Edomites arrive, someone will run to Jerusalem to inform the king. That was in the time of the Hashmonite or Hashmonian Maccabees, okay? This is in the year 150, give or take, BC, okay? It was a small place, and later on, King Herod arrived. And if you remember, we talked about King Herod, and we said that he had 10 different wives, and each one of them had a palace. But more than that, King Herod, that killed so many people to get into power, he understood that the fact that he's a king does not mean that no one will try to kill him. On the contrary. And because of it, he built for himself fort palaces everywhere. He said, you can never be too cautious. And the fact that I'm a paranoid does not mean that someone is not trying to kill me. And he built several fort palaces for himself in the desert. And Masada became from a small watchtower to a fort palace in the desert. And after King Herod passed away, it became watchtower again with the Roman army in it. But in the year 66 CE, AD, I see, the Jews decided that that's it. Now, what I mean that's it, for a very long time, since King Herod passed away, the Jews start to suffer from the presence of the Roman. But more than they suffer from the presence of the Roman and the corruption that they brought with them, terrible people, really, they were lacking the leadership. If you remember, I said King Herod killed the leadership. And when King Herod died himself, there was no one strong enough to inherit him, and the Roman liked it that way. And the Jews keep fighting with each other, and they break to those different sects and groups that we talked about that disagree, and some have power and some not, some in the center, some in the periphery, to the point that Jews understood the harsh reality of our life, and that is that we hate together way better than that we love together. Okay? We hate together better than we love together. And the Jew says, in order to stop fighting each other, we need to have a common enemy. And who will be a common enemy? The Roman. The only thing that all the Jews had in common, that they all hated the Romans. And therefore, the revolt, the great revolt over the Jews against the Roman Empire started. It was a terrible mistake. The Roman army was the best army in the world. The Roman Empire was the largest empire in the history of mankind. It still influenced the world that we live in today. And the Jews decided to challenge it, and the Romans did not like being challenged. So over the course of the next, from the year 66 to the year 70, in 4 years, they took over the entire land. That's including destroying Jerusalem with the Jewish temple in it, where horses of Roman officers were crossing rivers of blood in the street of Jerusalem. Men that were caught were sent to the gladiator pit in Caesarea. Women were raped and killed, and children were sold as prisoners. Okay, terrible, terrible cost. A small group of extremists, of zealots, Jewish extremists, were escaping Jerusalem in the beginning of the war, sneaking to Masada overnight, climbing quietly up the snake path. The Roman soldiers did not understand that the war started. They were unprepared. They slit their throat and they entered the city. The fort palace over here, it was not a city, and they made it their stronghold. And they stay here till the year of 74, 75. After the Roman destroyed Jerusalem, the battle is over. There is no Jewish resistance anymore. There are three places that they still need to punish, and Masada will be the last one. And indeed, in the autumn of the year 74, later on we're going to see the location. I'm going to explain how exactly. The Roman arrived Masada with a massive army to punish the last of the rebels that lived over here. Okay, a huge effort to punish the last, give or take 700 to 900 people, about 100 men among them, most of them women and children, most of them refugees of the war that were escaping and finding shelter over here. And they would take over Masada. We'll share the story step by step, but that was the end of the war. And Masada was abandoned, mostly abandoned. There was a short period that some monks live over here, but it was abandoned until modern times. And later on, we'll talk about why would people arrive here in modern times. Okay, so we start to see some of the sites. Not too many. It's hot. There's not a lot of shade, as I told you. One thing that is important to notice: everything that we see is going to be natural. We're going to see a black line. This is the restoration line. Everything above this line is not original. This is a suggestion by the archaeologists that found the place, found the stone on the ground, put it on top of. Okay, it seemed logical enough that the stone belong over there, but they don't want to assume. Okay, please do not climb over the walls. Those are ancient walls. This is a World Heritage Site, and sometimes people for pictures they climb up over the walls and whatever. Please do not do it.